Hi, this is Dr. Victoria Andarcia with the Healthful Roots podcast. I have Saril Vasquez with me today. And can you go ahead and just introduce yourself for us?
It'll be my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's such an honor to be able to share the microphone with you. My name is Saril Vasquez. I am a certified functional nutrition counselor, true cellular detox practitioner, and a certified event interventionist that is obsessed with helping women reverse hair loss naturally. My journey started when I had hair loss for 10 years. And I was actively working in the medical field for specialty pharmacies. I went to some of the providers that were my friends, whom I bought lots of cookies for. And I said, hey, you remember me? I brought you the cookies. Now it's your turn to help me. And I had a binder of labs that was literally probably 2 or 3 inches big that I collected, and I made a table of contents for them just to help them help me. And what I
Yeah.
realized was that there really wasn't enough available in conventional medicine to provide a cure or provide something promising, I should say, with managing hair loss and thinning. And so that's when I decided to take matters into my own hands. I went ahead and spent $75,000 in 2 years that I did not have because I was determined to have a different outcome. And part of that included obtaining the certifications I mentioned. It was also hyperbaric oxygen therapy. It was also lots of tests, lots of supplements, all these other things. But nonetheless, that is what prompted my journey. And here we are with the virtual practice and helping women reverse hair loss naturally.
Okay. Uh, there's a lot there, right? um, so, what led you to go the functional route for your hair loss?
Yeah, well, the providers, as I mentioned, that were my friends, dermatologists, gastroenterologists, they tried to help me with medication. They gave me spironolactone. We thought spironolactone was going to help because what triggered my hair loss at the age of 24 was getting off of the birth control patch. And so it did help to a certain degree. It stopped it from worsening faster or worsening, but it did not regrow what I had already lost. And on top of that, I had just intolerable side effects. My breath was rancid. It was so rancid I couldn't do my job and speak to people to get sales. I had irregular periods when I started it.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep had been affected. There were several things that made it difficult. The most important being that there was a risk of category C birth defects. And I knew I wanted to have children. So I weaned myself off of it and realized minoxidil wasn't taking me anywhere. I wasn't willing to try any other medication. And so I decided that functional medicine had to make sense because I was born being able to regrow hair naturally. And I had thick,
Yeah.
even more hair than I have now. It was just super thick. So I knew my body knew how to do it. And I had evidence that my body was always trying to get back to doing it because my hair loss would happen and then it would stop and it would get better. And then it would come back with a vengeance. So my body was already trying to fix it. I figured, why not learn how to support it? Why not learn how it's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
work? And what are the different systems in the body that work together? I know conventional medicine likes to separate everything with the ologies, gastroenterology and dermatology and endocrinology. But the truth is that the body, it works all together, all these different things together.
Yes.
And so that's why I knew that had to be part of the long-term solution for recreating a version of me that was able to grow hair naturally and easily.
Okay, I love that answer. So thank you for that. But you do mention that the hair loss started after you came off the birth control patch, presumably because it was masking maybe some imbalance that you already had going on. Can you explain how the hormonal imbalance contributes to hair loss? I know there's different things that you look at. The spironolactone being that it was trying to take care of the androgen, right, side of things.
Mhm.
But can you just elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So with hormones and hair loss, there definitely is a connection. I think the mistake that people often make is thinking it's the only solution. It's the only thing that's wrong. And if that
Yeah.
were the case, then getting on hormone replacement therapy or dialing in your thyroid medication would work. But no, it doesn't. There are clients that get on that merry-go-round. They never get the solution they're looking for because that is never going towards the root of the issue. And so, in my particular case, and in the case of a lot of women that suffer from hair loss when they get off of birth control or as a result of hormones, it was my body was pretending to be pregnant on the patch. Okay. I had progesterone to the point where my body thought I was pregnant. And so, whatever the hormonal fluctuations were there, it made my body forget how to create progesterone. When I got off the patch, my body was like, "Oh, you were giving me that for so long. I kind of having some trouble here. I don't really know how to. It's just been a while, right?"
Yeah.
And estrogen said, "I know what to do," especially because we do have different types of estrogen, but different types of estrogen proliferate at different rates. So the type of progesterone, the type of estrogen that causes cancer, E1, right? That would be the one that we would want to keep in check and is the one that got out of control when I got off of birth control. And so things that were happening was candida started overgrowing quickly. And when someone has estrogen dominance, meaning that their estrogen to progesterone ratio is off, there's an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase that takes place. It proliferates, and what it does is it will release the estrogen metabolite that you're trying to excrete and poop out. And what ends up happening is you end up becoming estrogen dominant because you create estrogen, your liver produces, or your gallbladder produces bile to conjugate to the estrogen so that it goes in your colon so you can poop it out. But then beta glucuronidase comes and releases that estrogen metabolite, and now it's back in your bloodstream even stronger than it was before. And so this contributes to the process. But then on top of that, it becomes a negative feedback loop because the excess estrogen makes bile more clumpy, which makes it harder for it to conjugate to toxicants like estrogen that is trying to poop out. And so it just becomes like this problem that worsens quickly because of all the nuances of
Reabsorption.
how it works,
Yeah.
right? And so in my particular issue, because I was giving myself synthetic hormones, my body was just having a hard time readjusting, and the type of estrogen that proliferates quickly took advantage of that, went ahead and took over, and then that's where the hormonal disharmony came into place.
Okay.
Yeah, and so
That's
one of the reasons why that contributes to hair loss, in case anyone is wondering, well, how come? Why would someone who's estrogen dominant have hair loss? Is because think about what I just explained. It becomes increasingly difficult for your body to detox well when your bile isn't conjugating to toxins, especially let's say you're constipated. Now it's worse, right? Because you're like reabsorbing toxins you're supposed to poop out. So when hair is created, hair is made out of organic matter. And if you have heavy metals in your body, which we all do, if anybody does a hair mineral test, they're going to find heavy metals in their hair. Then your hair is holding that. And so your hair has different phases. In one phase, it is what we could say planted like a plant with roots into your scalp, which is the soil. And what fertilizes it is the blood. And this is the phase that's called the anagen phase. And this is where your hair can get thick and it can grow long, right? Because it's attached to the blood supply that's giving it nutrient and oxygen. When it moves to the telogen phase, this is the phase where it's just sitting on your scalp and it's ready to fall out at any point. That's almost like a secondary way of detoxing because you're getting rid of the heavy metals that were in your hair. So your body is saying, I can't detox the way that I want to. And this girl's over here, she's eating the waffles with the syrup, she's drinking the microplastics, she's doing all of this stuff.
Yeah.
She's taking the drugs from the doctor, like she's drinking on the weekends. I'm just gonna have to do what I need to do. And so if you have that genetic superpower where your body's like, I know what to do. She got a lot more hair than she needs. It's hot in Florida anyway. She doesn't need all that hair. It will just be like, goodbye. It'll get rid of it, just to help you. Now, on our end, we think it's a sentence. We're like, oh, this feels like the worst thing that could ever happen in life. But it's really your body trying to take care of you, right? And then when it comes to androgenetic alopecia, which I was actually diagnosed with, that's a different story. Somebody who has that, they're genetically inclined to use testosterone as a method to modulate inflammation. So if I'm living this inflammatory lifestyle, which I was at the time, I was 24 years old. I thought I was on top of the world, right? I'm 38 now. So I know better. Yeah. But somebody who is living an inflammatory lifestyle, not sleeping enough, eating whatever they want, all of these other things, smoking weed, whatever. It's just toxicants. I'm not passing judgment, but everything you put in your body, you have to process. And so my body would say, or anyone that has AGA, the body would be saying, oh, there's a lot of inflammation here. What can we do? Well, if we create more testosterone, that is the modulator of inflammation. It'll help calm things down. So it's very important. Let's try to do that. And so in that case, DHT is a form of testosterone that cannot be broken down any further. Because of the process of aromatization, different hormones could be broken down further, but not DHT. DHT is testosterone, and that's it. It's staying like that. So you create more DHT, and so we notice a correlation. Oh, high DHT, hair loss. Is it a correlation or is it the cause? Well, now there's science that's starting to wonder, is it actually the cause? Because when there are high levels of DHT, there have also been shown it has also been shown that there are high levels of prostaglandins, and prostaglandins have the capacity to constrict and contract. And that constricting and contracting can cause less blood flow to the hair, which causes that miniaturization process. So is it the DHT or is it the prostaglandin or is it the combination of both? But what we do know is that just getting rid of or lowering the DHT is not reversing the hair loss.
That's interesting. I didn't know that, because you'll give like saw palmetto and other things to specifically bring down the DHT.
I mean, it can stop your body from making more DHT, which would stop it from getting worse. But what about all the constricting and the contracting that cause the miniaturization? Yeah. There are follicles in your scalp at that point that are scarred over, or they have calcifications. For instance, there was a study where the people at the morgue, they were opening people who were dead, cadavers that were bald, right? And so what they noticed were, it was typically happened in people that were born with a lot of hair. All of the places where the hair follicle was, they were scarred over. So it wasn't like that follicle just disappeared into thin air and it dissolved. It was still there. It was just scarred over. And that was what inhibited the hair to grow. So what if we could get rid of that scarring? What if we
Can you?
Yes.
Once you get scarring, can you reverse it?
In my practice, I do that all day with my clients. That's what I specialize in. And it varies according to person, right? And so I don't want to start dropping supplements, because the last thing I want to do is for someone to say, oh, well, she said this, and then I tried the supplement, and then it didn't work, and now there's no hope for me. There's a lot of things that go into it. We have to look at, why was the scar tissue being created? Did we mitigate that? Did we stop more from being? There's no point in breaking it down if we're not going to stop more from being created. And we want to look at, what are the different modalities we can use to break down scar tissue, which are, diet. It's also fasting periods. It's also massage. It's also increasing blood flow at the right time. So there are a lot of different factors put together that can get us that result where the hair, will will thicken and grow back in where it wasn't, because of the fact that we're being strategic about not creating more scar tissue and
Yeah.
breaking down what's there. So I'd love to show you a picture of what I used to look like, so you have an understanding. So this is my hair, super thin. It was just super thin all over. I had lost my ability to hold a curl and keep a curl. I also had bald spots. I don't know if you bald spots in my
There.
head.
Yeah.
So the hair had completely disappeared. So you can see it was very thin. And then
Yeah.
there was also balding, and I'll show you one more picture, which was the part,
Yeah.
right? So all of that is grown in.
Well, it looks like it. Your hair is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. But the thing, and I have other clients too. I had a client that had hair loss for 25 years, and
Mm.
she had gastric bypass surgery. That was her triggering
Oh,
event. They cut out 2/3 of her colon, and she said, I don't see how I can regrow my hair because I didn't even have the colon surface area to get the nutrients in. So how, but we were able to, in 4 months, I wish I could really quickly find a picture of what happened with her. But in 4 months, we were able to get her hair to grow in very, very noticeably, in to the point where she was in awe. I mean, even I was in awe a little bit, but it was because here it is. We really focused on breaking down the scar tissue.
mm. Okay. So that brings me like to one of the questions I had for you is, I mean, obviously nobody wants hair loss because we're women in general, or like men too. You can be very like vain about it. Like hair makes you feel like pretty and all the things, but it seems to be a sign that there's something else going on, right? Like of something more serious than, what you're seeing in the mirror. From what I've read about you, you focus on supporting like all body systems, right? You're not just like targeting like put this on your head or take this supplement. So can you explain why a comprehensive approach is like crucial for what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you my example. For instance, my friend who was a doctor labeled me with androgenetic alopecia because
Mhm.
she ran her fingers through my hair, and then I had clumps. Right now I did
Yeah.
take out one hair, but there was like hair, falling out. I am on my period though, and more hair falls out when you're on your
Yeah.
period, just for the record. But nonetheless, when she saw that, she gave me that diagnosis, right? And she said, "Oh, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is slow it down." And so, by looking at it from that approach, it's really just trying to understand that, there's a hormone attached to the problem, and that hormone is testosterone. There's not really much we can do with that. But what my
Hmm.
problem really was the fact that I had exposure to mold. And that, on
Mm.
top of the estrogen dominance, was making it increasingly difficult for my body to detox, which made me susceptible to more issues because the more we expose ourselves to toxicants, the more likely we are to turn on genes that we don't want to turn on. For instance,
Right.
when someone develops high cholesterol, it's typically because they have let's say this is their arteries, right?
Hmm.
And so they have inflammation, which causes a tear in their arteries. Somebody that has the high cholesterol superpower will make their liver create excess cholesterol to come over and bloop, just plug that hole to repair the damage. And then if they have enough good cholesterol, the good cholesterol will come over, take over the leftover bad cholesterol and bring it back to the liver. That is just telling us that this person has excess inflammation. And by trying to give them medication, focusing on bringing down the cholesterol, we're completely avoiding the fact that there's inflammation in the first place. And so by putting yourself in a position to consistently grow plaque around your arteries and never addressing the arterial tears, you become more susceptible to overall diseases, more
Hmm.
diseases in the first place. And so in my situation, it was mold. It was also heavy metals when I had amalgams in my mouth. I had my tonsils taken out, which made me, just a little handicapped when it comes to detoxing as well. It was candida overgrowth, which got worse when I had the estrogen dominance, which caused little holes in my gut, which made my gut leaky, which gave me lots of food allergies, which means I was consistently inflamed. And this is the case with all my clients. When they come to me,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, they took out my uterus, they took out my gallbladder, I'm menopausal, I don't get a period. There's a lot of different things to come into play, but there's always a story. And so when we never focus on the root issue and we're just trying to put a cream on our head, then we never addressed the alarm that the body intended to ring. So the alarm
Yeah.
is, if your hair is falling out, that should be alarming. And you should start investigating and wanting to say, okay, body, what is it? What you trying to tell me something? Let's fix it, because you know and I know that it's not normal to have a bunch of hair fall out. It just isn't.
Right.
It's not just genetics. There's something going on. Your body's trying to communicate that to you. And so when you ignore what that alarm is trying to warn you of, you just make yourself more susceptible. This is how people develop cancer. This is how people, develop multiple autoimmune conditions. Next thing you know, you're on a bunch of medication. Your lifespan is shorter. And you just didn't live the fully fulfilling life that you were intended to live, where you looked or you felt beautiful until you were 75 and you had a lot
Yeah.
of energy, right? So it's like, how do you want to live your life is the question.
Exactly. And I just wanted to point that out because something like a seemingly like, oh, hair loss, whatever, right? Like, I don't think that people would go see a functional practitioner about something like that. So, just two more things. Like, do you think, first, that sleep quality affects hair?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you this. There are 5 non-negotiables when it comes to reversing hair loss naturally.
Okay, I like
And
non negotiables.
yes, this is what I focus on in my practice, first and foremost. Number 1, sleep. Why? Because your body detoxes this cranial area when you go to sleep through the glymphatic system. So what happens is your brain literally shrinks as you sleep because the glial cells reduce in size. And what that does is, when it shrinks in volume, it leaves more space for all of the liquids to drain. It's especially helpful if you sleep with your head elevated and like a pillow, so it's elevated, so more
Yeah.
can drain, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So sleep is, and it's also the time that your liver detoxes. It's also the time that you are in your parasympathetic nervous system for an extended period of time, if your sleeping environment is safe for you. There are some people, myself included, while I was trying to figure this out, I was intoxicating myself while I was sleeping because I was inhaling dust and mold and things I was allergic
Yeah.
to. And so when I woke up, instead of having lost 5 pounds, having thicker hair, and having glowing skin, I had dark circles under my eyes. I was bloated. I felt tired. My hair was thinner, and it was because I was poisoning myself overnight because my environment was poisoning me. So sleep, you don't want to. You want to make sure we have that optimized as much as we possibly can for lots of
Yes.
reasons. The next thing is blood sugar balance. Blood sugar balance is important because if your blood sugar is out of whack, then insulin is a hormone. Your hormones will just be out of whack. Cortisol is a hormone that has to do with blood sugar, right? So we need to make sure that your blood sugar is staying in this stable range instead of going up and down very volatile, in a volatile way, because that's
Yeah.
an inflammatory event when it's doing that. And inflammation is the third non-negotiable. If you're walking around with leaky gut and you're eating certain foods that are making you inflamed, or you're eating foods like sugar that are making you inflamed, that's messing up your blood sugar balance, that's giving you other symptoms that your body is going to reallocate sources to fix. So every time
Yeah.
you go through inflammation, your body is using oxygen in the process of inflammation. Guess what's not getting enough oxygen? Your hair. You're always inflamed, right? So you're just like,
Yeah.
forget your hair. We got bigger fish to fry. That's how your body thinks, right? So and then there's 2 more. There's healing the gut, and there's what was the other thing? Oops, hold on. Sleep. sleep, blood sugar balance, inflammation, healing the gut, and circulation of your
Mhm.
lymphatic system and of the blood. So when it comes to healing the gut, I mean, there's several things that we're doing there. That in and of itself is a 5-step process. But optimally, you want to have a gut that, you eat, you poop, you're not getting bloated, you don't have any chronic underlying infections, your gut lining is sealed, you have enough stomach acid, all of the things that are required to make your gut healthy. And then when it comes to circulation, your lymphatic system and the blood, both of those circulatory systems are actually very closely intertwined. And
Yeah.
you want both of them to be working and flowing well, because if you aren't getting rid of the lymphatics that are in your body, your cells aren't getting detoxed well. You're creating a cesspool for pathogens to thrive in. You don't want that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have blood flowing well, guess what? The blood is the healer. This is why
Exactly.
diabetics get amputations, because their blood becomes so thick, it doesn't flow where it needs to flow. Then that area that isn't getting blood becomes gangrenous, becomes infected, because the way that life works is when something dies, bacteria comes to the scene to change the composition of it. So there's no blood, there's death, there's necrosis, there's bacteria. Now we have to
Yeah.
cut that off so the infection doesn't spread, right? So if we have blood, we have life. The heart stops, you die,
Yes.
because there's no blood flowing, right? So
Yeah.
we want to optimize circulation to make sure that isn't plaque in the arteries. There isn't, we're normalizing blood pressure. There isn't anything that can divert blood flow to your scalp as well, because that can happen moment to moment. How much blood flow
Yeah.
is going in your scalp? It can happen from a stress response. It can happen from what you eat. So all of those things are important to keep in mind when we focus on addressing the 5 non-negotiables. After that, it's important to also look at hormonal harmony, how well the body's detoxing, and the immune system. So, like, all of these things are
Yeah.
important to get the body to a place where it can regrow healthy hair easily.
Okay. And so I was going to ask you how you work with your patients, like what it would look like, but it sounds like you focus on these 5 non-negotiables, right? And then from there, do you like work on everything at the same time, or do you have like a stepwise process?
I typically have a process. The first step is I do a very detailed intake. When I
Hmm.
say detailed, I mean 85 questions long. So I'm asking everything from were you born vaginally or through a
Yeah.
C-section, all the way to did you get COVID? Did you get the jab? All of these
Hmm.
things. And then I make a timeline. When did the hair loss start, so I can figure out what were the different what was the trigger or the different
Right.
triggers, and how were you setting yourself up to develop that, because there were ways that you were living, things that happened, ways you were eating that created that perfect storm, so that boom, one day the gene just turned on. But
Yeah.
you were setting yourself up the whole time. And so I, excuse me, go through that process with my clients, and then after that we paint a picture of what I call the roadmap. And I explain to them all the different body systems that are in need of support, and what are the symptoms that are manifesting because the body systems are not working well. And then I focus on the non-negotiables, but I also focus on getting clear on identifying what are the triggers that this person is showing us. We need to figure out what are the things that make hair loss worse for this person,
Yeah.
so that we can be clear on what are the things we're going to do that's going to make it better.
Okay. Yeah, because everybody's going to be different. So you have to individualize that approach. So that makes sense that you do it that way. Okay. I mean, this was like really good in that I learned things I didn't know about hair loss.
Awesome.
Um, h- how can our listeners connect with you and learn more about your practice?
Well, I did want to make a special offer for your listeners. I have a quiz on my website. It's what I call the hair regrowth quiz, that someone can take, and they can see if their hair has the possibility of getting repaired and regrowing naturally based on the practice results that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of that quiz, there is an opportunity to book a consult with me. So it typically has a fee, but if your listeners use the discount code CONSULT, CONSULT, then they will go ahead and get that fee waived. So there wouldn't be a cost involved for them.
Sounds definitely worth it for the quiz and the consult. So I'll put that in the show notes, as well as your website. You have an Instagram. Is there any other way that you would want people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, my Facebook group has been around for years and it's growing,
Okay.
and I do weekly calls in there and I take community
Oh, nice.
questions. So that is reversing hair loss naturally. That's the name of the Facebook group. It's where I'm the most active. Instagram, I'm still just, kind of
I know
playing
it's a
with.
struggle. I know. I'm not a fan, but I'm trying.
but Facebook, they'll see a lot of activity there, and they can always check out my website. My website has uh, a blog and testimonials and things that they can find, the other podcasts that I've been on. So there's also a wealth of information there.
Okay, great. I will put all this in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for your time today. It was really interesting, and I know it'll be helpful for the listeners.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. It was so amazing to take some time and be with you today and your listeners. And I hope, if I could just impart one thing on whoever's listening right now, I just want you to know, if you believe that your hair loss can go away and that you can have a normal life again, then that's what's going to happen. Don't let go of that belief. Once you start doubting, oh, I don't know, maybe not for me, maybe it won't work for me, maybe I'm a lost cause, that is exactly what is going to self-actualize. So don't give up the
Exactly.
faith. Don't give up the faith and just keep going at it, because your body's trying to talk to you. It's already trying to show you that it wants to get better. You just have to have the right tools to support it. And that life that you dream of is in your grasp. Just believe in it.
I 100% agree with that. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.